Shalom, brothers and sisters, and welcome all. And we are going to need the shalom, that is the peace that we have resting in confidence in our Lord Jesus Christ for this one. And I should have introduced the first episode the same way. This is our series on the outlandish Colorado legislation. So it began with the first episode. So here we have a 9-week-old human child, and they don't actually have a voice, so we have to be their voice and advocate for them. And so on their behalf, we say, my humanity triggers some Colorado lawmakers. Let's despise them. And later, we are also going to honor some Colorado lawmakers who want me to live. Some Colorado lawmakers want me murdered. Let's shame them. That will be the next episode. The final episode is going to be some Colorado lawmakers oppose the people. Let's reject them. And we are going to hear what the people have to say. The Colorado people have asserted my humanity. Let's hear them. This is the topic of today's episode in this 5-part series on this outlandish Colorado legislation. So the bill is very short. We'll look at it and read it so that you have context. For a moment, let me review the previous episode just momentarily. And that was when we interviewed. In fact, let me share screen and pull it up. And we'll actually show our brother's face and have some context to all this. Good to see you, Iron Matt. Shalom. And yeah, I think a lot of people can't face the truth about the mass murder that's going on. And just now, when I was looking at this picture, these series of pictures for our episodes, which are going to be in this order as I'm showing them now. And I said I was advocating for them, and so we speak in the first person. But then I'm thinking it is my humanity that triggers some Colorado lawmakers. It's not like my humanity is somehow superior to this baby's humanity just because the baby is still in the womb. And so it's not like that baby's humanity is a different humanity and the baby's humanity triggers them. It's just the fact that humans have value is what triggers them, because there's no difference between their humanity and ours. There's no difference between their humanity and our humanity. There's a difference between their skill set. There's a difference between their physiology. There's no difference between their humanity and our humanity. Human rights are triggering these people, and they're in power to command weapons. And this is going to get vulgar for a moment, but if we're going to talk about weapons, a woman spreads her legs open so that steel weapons. I mean, we think of swords, but the baby Well, I think we're talking about when they start using the weapons early, we're getting a bit of a bigger baby. But the weapons are much larger. Imagine a sword as tall as your roof or your house, as tall as Goliath. And then they insert the weapons in there to cut the woman's baby to pieces inside of her and tear it out in pieces. No anesthesia or anything. And when they want to save both lives and the baby passes away, even though they want to save both lives, they treat the baby as a human, to ease pain and all of that. And then people want to compare when it's impossible to save both lives to the murder of the baby, which they call euphemistically to withdraw from, or to decline, to choose not to continue in a process. That's what they call it, but what it is it's murder. And this topic is murder, and you're probably not going to hear the A word come out of my mouth. And hopefully you haven't heard it come out of my mouth. And you're going to hear it over and over today. You're going to hear that euphemism, that softening of it, that lying about it, because that is not what it is. End Abortion Now needs to change its name because it is not abortion. I call them to change their name. I call them to do what is right. I call End Abortion Now to stand on the word of God. Change your name. I suggest infanticide is infanticide. You could, no, I suggest murder is murder. Or you could call yourselves humans are humans. Those are two good options. Let's cut to the chase and get to the point and stop playing footsies. It is not abortion. We don't want to end abortion now because it is not abortion. It is murder. Murder, murder, murder. I call End Abortion Now to change their name, to live up to what they preach when they preach about how to stand on truth. I can't call the pagans. Pagans are going to peg. I have to call you. You have power in this End Abortion Now. Change your name. Can I get the few people inside chat? Do you agree with me? If you do, all caps. Change your name. It is not the ending of a process. It is a murder of one of our fellow humans. Our humanity triggers these people because their heart is murderous. Only the gospel will help them. Only the gospel. Okay. So let me pull up the live stream. That was Holy Spirit. Yeah, so therefore that's God calling you to it, End Abortion Now. And yeah, this one's going to get clipped. And I'll be sharing. Thank you very much, Iron Matt. And I'll be sharing this one with Brother Jeremy. And Jeremy, I think the debate is over about whether it's okay to use the word abortion or not. I dare say the Spirit of God has spoken on the matter. And in case anyone is questioning what's going on right now, hear these 3 words: just trust Messiah. There is no other name by which there is any authority. I stand on his name. This is madness. Pagans are the ones who are going to peg. Pagans are the ones who are going to peg. And don't worry, this is temporary, but I'm going to just do this privately. Don't worry, this is temporary, but okay, let's continue with the show. I'm gonna have let me fix that. I gotta mute the YouTube now that it's open. Speed it up a little bit so it'll catch up. Save my bandwidth by lowering the resolution on that. And then let's open another YouTube. I'll have to remember to fix the resolution because I'm going to screen share this one. Okay. And also, it's not because of disagreeing with a specific thing I said. It's because of the specific thing that was said. Yeah, the comment that I'm not putting on screen. And that's the reason. It's not because people were obligated to agree with me about demanding that they change their name, or maybe not demanding, but calling them to it. But the battle is in words. And we're to be shrewd as serpents and harmless as doves, not naive as doves, so that we let the serpents be harmful. What am I doing? It was on my own channel. Okay, opening up my own previous video. As pagans are going to pag, we can only call each other to do what's right. Pagans are going to pag, and they've influenced us all, but we are called to come out from among them and to not be spotted by the world. That's true religion, to visit the orphans and the widows in their need, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. And the pagans pag, but we have the power and the righteousness of God. Here it is. I see. So YouTube will first put up the live stream in the order it was scheduled, and then eventually, after the fact, it goes up in the order which it aired. Okay, let me get this screen share up. Sorry, this stream's taken a while. Yeah, just wasn't easy for me. It had to be done. Oh, okay. As soon as I pushed play, it fixed itself. Sounds like my computer's working very hard. Okay. I'm not even screen sharing yet, am I? Yeah, because the point was whether or not it's okay to use a euphemism which favors the murdering of babies. So I'll just make clear what my point was. Is it okay for people who say that they're on the front lines of fighting against the murder of babies to promote the use of a euphemism that is specifically designed so that more babies will be murdered, and then to think that that's an acceptable way to conduct that part of the battle? Now, I'm not condemning end abortion now by any stretch of the imagination. They fight the battle. But on the part of the battle, as you see the A words coming out of my mouth, but as a proper noun, right? Or to say specifically that that's not what it is. But if you're fighting the battle by speaking the truth, and then you're using the euphemism that's designed for babies to die, then on that specific point of how you're fighting the battle, you are negligent. And It's okay to make errors, but I'm going to call them to correction, and I'm going to push for this. And it does matter. It's very important. And yeah, so the idea of whether or not technically this, technically that is not the point. The point is that babies are being murdered, and getting into nonsense that it's not about is exactly why we haven't stopped them. Because the pagans are going to pag. We have to stop it. And if we don't stop it, it continues to happen. And hey, maybe we can't stop it. But what we can do is we can care about the babies and refuse to use the euphemism. And if we're, discussing the matter, we can stand where things matter and where the fight is won, rather than being tempted to stand where the enemy wants us to stand because they have some strength there. So how we go about the debate, how we go about the argument, now the part about whether or not it's murder, that part of the debate is over. In fact, I guess there is no debate. So now we have to live like there is no more debate. I mean, the debate's been going on for 50 years, and every single year we've won the debate. When are we finally going to say, look, now that we've won the debate, we insist? Are we going to let them pretend it's still a debate forever while babies are being murdered? If you pretend it's a debate, then it seems to me that spiritually pretending it's a debate is to spiritually be on their side of the fight. And by spiritually, I mean cause and effect, not necessarily in your heart, but the cause and effect there is that you're on their side of the fight. That's the reality of the situation if you continue to engage in it as a debate. Now, there are moments to give testimony to state the facts in order to have the debate on record. But at the same time, the fact should be stated in such a way that it's not a debate, it's just a fact. So that's not actually a debate, that's testimony, that's record. And we're going to see a whole lot of that today, and a lot of it's going to be so awesome. But first, I'm just introducing the topic, which took me a minute, and then I think enough time has gone by that I'm able to set things back to normal. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then yeah, and out of love and caring and out of soldiery, to be on my team is to be a soldier at my side, and that is a tough thing. And there are the tough moments, right? But I can't be at a picnic while I need to be on the front lines. So whoever's on my team is on the front lines as a soldier. And there's shouting, there's commands, and there's not time to be slow about correction. We don't need to be stiff-necked, and I'm not saying anyone would be. I'm just talking about the circumstance, not about a specific person now. The circumstance of being a soldier on the front line with me. I want to be corrected quickly so that I can get to the fight well. And I'll put out there what I can to feed the sheep, and it'll have its fruit. But being on my team as a soldier by my side is a different thing. And it's an honor, but it's also tough. Someone's got to be tough. And I hope there are some someones who are glad to be tough right along with me. No, there was a temporary change. There's not two of anybody. Everything's okay. That's what I'm talking about, being tough with my fellow soldiers. So let's just continue. I'm not putting that stuff on screen. I'm not trying to make it especially public. just being honest about things and all that. Okay, Mind Ben, let me ask you about this real quick. So we're doing some sort of the personal channel stuff, but this is my personal channel, and so that's how it goes. So Mind Ben, were you the Benjamin who had a problem with how we were addressing? Well, no, because you would have already known about all of these things. Because there was someone who went by Benjamin and he stopped hanging out here for a certain reason. And I'm trying to find out if you're saying, I am that Benjamin, or if that has nothing to do with you. Yes, you are that Benjamin? Okay. So, yeah. I'm not sure exactly. Okay. So, I'm not sure exactly what was. Yeah, because it seemed to me like that Benjamin would knew less than I would expect you to know. So I don't know if there was anything going on with that. But even if there was, that's water under the bridge because you're being open now, and that's all we can ask in the present. So, yeah, I'm not going to delve into that or ask anything about it or be suspicious. It's just whatever. If there was anything weird about it, it's in the past. If there was not anything weird about it, then I'm sorry I got a weird impression. And yeah, thank you for just clarifying everything so that the truth is out there and we understand what's going on. So he's just establishing who he is relative to another account, another name that he has also been here as. So let's get to our live stream. So I want to screen share. Okay, now we're actually getting there. So I'm just going to show a little bit from my last video. The channel Emmaus Road is in the description down below. I'd like everyone to subscribe. And then, if you have time while they're doing something live, I would like you to hang out in their live chat and contribute and have it be that when they do live streams, there's a few people there talking and stuff. And they're kind of early right now and growing. And so once they really grow, then they'll have their own momentum, and I won't necessarily like request the same thing because maybe your time would be better spent elsewhere in the fight. But for now, I would like people to I don't know if it's a link to one of their videos or to the channel, but it's in the description. I saw that it is in the description of this video. Whatever the link is, exactly, it's to Emmaus Road. So yeah, I would like you to subscribe and just contribute in that small way to helping them get momentum. So let me see. Colorado lawmakers are triggered. That's the one. Because the other one is the video we're making right now. Okay, so I think this rally happened like a week ago. For time's sake, because anyone who wants to can go back and watch this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a moment that shows. Here's good because it shows both Jeremy and, I'm not remembering, Dave. Okay, and his face doesn't look too weird. I mean, it's not like the very best, but he just looks thoughtful and all that. So it's a good pause. They both look, yeah, it's a good pause because you know how pauses can be goofy. Now, the larger man on the screen who is going by the screen name, because of the pause, it's hard to read it, but it's Bawan Kanabi, or something to do with because his last name is so Yublun Kanabi because his last name is Uberoth, but it looks like it's Uberoth. And yeah, so his name's Jeremy Uberoth, and he's a pastor who is the frontline man in the state of Colorado when it comes to the church fighting against legal murder, which for the most part is only the murder of preborn babies. I guess there is also assisted suicide is becoming a thing now. And I guess like here in California, they don't like publicize, to publicity, any of this stuff to where I know where to find it. So maybe I need to take responsibility and find out where a Californian follows things, creepy laws, right? Because I'm keep hearing all sorts of weird, creepy laws to like to allow for a man up to 24 years of age to you know, take a sexual advantage, which is sexual abuse, obviously, even unto statutory rape. But I guess it's not statutory rape because it's called statutory, right? And apparently that's not worthy of a statute for a 24-year-old and a 14-year-old, or maybe you have to be within 10 years. So is that a 23-year-old and a 14-year-old? No, I think it's 24. The first year is within a year, and then actually it should only be 23. But anyway, just at once they're trying to prosecute all these cases from the past on such matters, and then they're changing the laws to make such matters acceptable. So it's a contradiction. The pagans, everything they do is a contradiction, and that's everyone who's not a Christian. So Ben Shapiro is a pagan. Matt Walsh is a pagan because he's Catholic. Obviously, the Romanists and the Jews are probably the most obviously pagan. Oh, and Islam are the most obviously. Well, I guess what's that other one? That's in its way, it's obviously pagan, right? Hinduism also. So those four are the most. Hinduism would, I guess, be the most drastically pagan, followed by Romanism, followed by probably Islam, and then Judaism. But of course, Kabbalah takes the cake, which is really what's, I think, behind modern Judaism. So this is very important that, we draw the line between us and pagans, and we understand that, there is no teamwork between light and darkness. So, yeah, that means we've got to keep calling each other to the fight because we've got to stop thinking we can work with them. It's never going to work. It'll never work. We can't work with them. We got to call each other to the fight. We've got to step into the fight and exhort each other to join us in the fight. So that's what Brother Jeremy Uberoth is doing. He has joined the fight, and he is calling other Christians, non-pagans, to join him in the fight. And Brother David, he is, we like to refer to him as the good representative. There's a couple of the good representatives, and then there's a bunch of the bad representatives. And Jeremy was actually there. He had to wear a mask, apparently. That's him sitting behind David. And they testify, him and one of their elders and his co-pastor. So they're both pastors at that church, Jeremy and the other gentleman. And I don't know, if the other gentleman is head pastor or if they are just both pastors. And then there was Jeff Durbin came from Arizona. And that's, teamwork of the body and all that. And in Colorado, you don't have to be from the state to testify. Now, I didn't step in to testify because I didn't want to be counterproductive. Like, people are coming from other states, and so it's not really the Colorado people's will, but it's just, all those anti-abortion, as they would say it, right? Because I'm doing a quote, like, from their perspective, anti-abortion people. So it's just these people who have this political movement, right? So I don't think it would have been productive for me to testify. And additionally, there was so much excellent testimony. I don't think I could have offered anything that was not offered. And you guys know me. I like to choose the words and get right there. But I think anything that would have been expressed in what I said was already made obvious by the others. And the there's only so many hours in a day, and it was going on for so many hours because there were so many good Coloradans testifying. And so we can trust other people to step in and do the job where they should do the job, and then we should step in and do the job where we should, because God does provide. Jehovah Jireh. I think that's the right way to pronounce it, or Jehovah Jireh. The God, the Jehovah who provides. Amen. And so Dave, I think, was the main sponsor of the bill, and the testimony he gives here is pretty awesome, and he's nervous when he would never normally be nervous because he is drawing that line. You know, without directly saying it, it's obvious that spiritually he comes here speaking, drawing the line between Christianity and paganism. And that's the one thing that Christians are never allowed to do. We can do everything else, but we're never allowed to just blatantly say it like it is. As long as we compromise somewhere and pretend some level of equality, we're allowed to be Christians. But if we declare in such a way as though we believe that he is on the throne, then they want us in death camps. Wide gate, narrow gate. Wide gate, narrow gate. Who will compromise? And who has built their house on the rock? Amen. So, wonderful. So, these brothers, so what happened was they got together and worked as a team with other lawmakers to make this law that just criminalized the murdering of preborn babies. I think they did use the A word in the bill, and that is the legal terminology that's already on the books. So, for that reason, I'm not going to blame anyone for using the euphemism in terms of, you know, having to reference a legal term in order to make official that those laws are invalid, that kind of thing, right? But yeah, and no partial measures, but perhaps, well, I'd have to look at the language of this original bill and see how well they did at just cutting through the debate and protecting all humans, right? Because I think as soon as we start saying protecting all humans, including these ones, then we're depicting it as if there's a difference between their humanity and ours, and we're sort of giving them momentum or weight, or weight in the fight, right? So I think really we have to always insist on no distinction between their humanity and ours. So really all we have to write into law is that there is no distinction between their humanity and ours, and human rights are rights of all humans. And once we do that, then from there we should legislate. But we should not legislate from there's these other types of humans that we need to especially protect and talk about. We need a foundation that wipes that away, and then we can specifically build on it, saying, yeah, obviously, this thing about humans, if you have to ask, it applies to these preborn humans. What are you, stupid? You know? So obviously, you can't write "What are you, stupid" into a piece of legislation. That would be awesome. But and maybe you could. But hopefully you guys get the point, because I haven't practiced talking about this topic. I don't have the exact articulate words for it. So they passed a bill that murdering the preborn is just plain murder, and there's consequences. And that our humanity triggered some Colorado lawmakers. And I say our humanity because there's no difference between the humanity of the 9-week-old baby and the humanity of whoever may be listening to my voice right now. And so it is your humanity, whoever is hearing my voice right now, that triggered these Colorado lawmakers. The fact that humans have a right to live triggered these Colorado lawmakers. They want humans to not have a right to live. Now, they're starting by trying to declare that it's specifically preborn humans who, in their words, So this bill was called 1079. I think that might have referred to the 10th week of the year. So the next bill was called 1279, and it came out just barely over a week later. Or maybe it was about 2 weeks. But anyway, yeah, so 1079. And that was when I did, I had this banner up, A Tale of Two Bills. So 1079 was that the babies are humans, and if you murder them, you're a murderer. And then they responded after shooting it down with 1279, which states that it doesn't word it exactly this way. We'll read it in just a moment, but it states that our fellow humans who are pre-born have no independent nor any derivative rights. So that means, like, for instance, because they have a mother who wants them to live, that doesn't impart them with any rights. And so then, if that's written into law, then obviously if a mother wants to save her child, but her child is in the womb, the doctor's not obligated to save her child. So she would have to, like, I guess if she's not in labor, she'd have to, like, rip the child out of her own womb and then say, okay, the child is born, now save my child's life. And that's not the best way to save your child's life. And I know this is not like the realistic way it would happen, but it's what's being written into law. This is if you were put in that situation, I mean, realistically, it could happen. You could be in a situation, especially 30 years down the line or something, when the world gets even creepier. You know, you could be in a situation. Your daughter or granddaughter could be in a situation where they want their child in the womb saved, but it has no independent or derivative rights. And the doctor says, well, your insurance doesn't cover that. And then if she wants to save her child's life, the only way, that she can beg for her child's life to be saved is to first get the child out of the womb so that it's then a born child and it can have some independent or derivative human rights. Humans are humans. And so that's the tale of two bills. And what happened is the first bill was shot down, and then the new bill is really absurd, and we're about to read it. Okay, I just want to let Mind Ben know I'm reading your comments. I'm not going to publicize them on screen unless you specifically say, like, put them on screen. That's what I want, because I want to come out into the open to people who watch this channel. So if you want them on screen, then go ahead and let me know, but otherwise I'm not going to put them on screen. I'm just going to read them quietly. Yeah, mine, Ben. Okay, so that wasn't saying what I thought it might say. That was more your personal stuff. But I don't know if what's going on there seems to potentially explain what I was wondering about elsewhere. So I hope you're still listening at this moment, Mind Ben, because I want to encourage you that when it comes to where to find assurance in Christ, here's what's awesome, Mind Ben, is that the answer of where to turn to find assurance in Christ is the same for someone who is already saved but is experiencing doubt, as it is for someone who is not saved. That which is the gospel and the obviousness of Christ is the power of God to save those who are not yet saved. Of course, they're elect, or that might be beside the point right now, but I would say they are, and that's comforting, right? God's sovereignty is trustworthy, but he's so trustworthy and obviously so. And that's where we turn people so that they'll believe the gospel. If they don't believe it yet, it's also where we turn to find assurance and build our assurance if we're lacking assurance. And so that's what's awesome is, in a sense, it doesn't matter whether or not you're already have built your house on the rock and you already believe, or what does that even mean over the course of like decades and being spiritually matured and starting out immature? Like, some people, they might spiritually seem like they're not as Christian as I am. And someone might say, well, maybe they haven't built their house on the rock, but they're just at a different place in their walk and they're just a different person. Who knows, right? But it doesn't matter so much whether you're already saved or not. The place where to find assurance or where to go to believe the gospel if you don't will be the same. And so, yeah, whether you're already saved or not, I'd like you to hang around this channel and just be encouraged in the obviousness of Christ and the trustworthiness and that the gospel is true. And if you are saved, then being more sure of what the gospel is and of Christ will assure you of that. And if you're not saved, then seeing the obviousness of Christ and hearing the gospel and then coming to be fully persuaded is going to bring you to salvation. And so, yeah, please stay around here, Mine Ben. Please do. And, okay, so having said that, and I guess that means your name is Benjamin. So, if you don't mind, I'll call you by your first name. If you do mind, let me know. So, yeah, so unfortunately, not going to dig into that more right now. It is my favorite topic, but like I said, I'm encouraging him to be around here. And, that is why I do this, because his mind Ben was telling us that a quote unquote pastor was leading him astray. And so that's why I'm doing this here on the internet, is for the fact that there are people with the wrong pastor so that there's something else that may help them, right? And also for people who have the right pastor, this is very much about edification and learning and all that. My channel is. So there's multiple reasons why I do it the way I do. But yeah. So let's continue here. And we got brothers and sisters just encouraging our brother here in side chat. It's like really beautiful to see. And this is a lot to do with what my last live stream was about regarding First John. It's like almost 7 hours or something. It is really long. So you might not want to watch it if you're concerned about your time. And it's definitely things that I will talk about in the future in a more concise way. And so, yeah. So I'm not necessarily recommending everyone watch it because it's so long, but if you do want to watch something that long, then it is a good one. And Cheryl just says, "Amen." Oh, and yeah, I can't accept that gratitude in this sense that what's going on right now is such a church thing. And what I was saying about First John, there is a oneness between the Lord Christ and God and the gospel. And as John puts it multiple times, the life, the eternal, and the fellowship that we have together. You see, the message is the gospel so that we may love one another. So, this is the summary of yesterday's live stream. The message that John was delivering, the commandment that John was delivering, is the gospel. It is the Lord Jesus Christ. It is the truth. It is the light. It is God. It is our salvation. And it is the fellowship that we have in Him together. And it is that we love one another. And that doesn't mean the world. We are to love the world in one way. But when it talks about loving one another in the book of John, it's talking about us. It's talking about what was just going on in side chat here. And that is all by the Spirit of God and by Him. Just as the devil wanted to tempt him to command the stones to turn to bread. So the gospel, and why bring up something the devil said? Because of the use of language, command, so that. John is saying that the gospel is the message and command of Christ so that we love one another. And then he specifies, after making the point of loving one another, even to the point of death, and in context, it mostly applies to dying to self, which refers to believing the gospel, building your house on the rock, giving up everything to follow after Christ. If we're not willing to die to the flesh and walk in the Spirit, then we don't benefit the church. And so after clarifying that, so he said the message, first he said the message is so that we love one another. It's to cause us to love one another. And then he specifies unto death, as I said. And then he said that the commandment is so that, as in it causes us, it's so that we may believe unto the Lord Jesus. And so that we may love one another even as he gave. It's either commandment or the commandment, but it's talking about even as he gave the gospel. How did he give the gospel? By laying down his life. And John had already clarified, loving one another even to the point of laying down our life. We need to take up our cross, and if we die in his death, we raise in his resurrection. And so he says that the commandment is so that we may believe and so that we may love one another, even in this way in which, that's the reason, is because the exact word there is kathos, which translates exactly as in the way in which. So he says that we are to love one another even in, we are to love one another in the way in which he gave commandment. And John has made it very clear. He's saying even to the point of dying. And the death of the body is an easy death to give. That's why so people will fight for their country even if they're not Christians, because they can feel good about it. They can be proud of what they've done. But the death to self, that can never be proud. That's a hard death to die, but we're called to die it so that we love one another. And okay, so let me get to the topic of this live stream, because so I'll probably clip that too, the summary of what the live stream about First John was. So this wasn't really meant to be the clipping, the part calling End Abortion Now to change their name so that they're not endorsing the euphemism, which is specifically designed to promote the murder of babies. So I make it narrower, it turns it smaller on my screen and bigger on your screen, right? No, it makes no difference on your screen. That's weird. Okay. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, so let's get to the bill. Let's go ahead and open up the bill. I probably already have it open somewhere, but I think it'd be faster. I just go to my favorites real quick and grab it. Reproductive health. The name is disgusting. I don't even want to say it. If I am going to say it, I got to have it on screen and be talking about it in due order. Yeah, so the point is that I'm so grateful to God for our fellowship together and that we're here for each other, that everyone inside chat was here for our brother, and that I'm here for him, and that he is here for us, that the weaker members are all the more important. And so, let's see. Okay, I got a nice screen shape. Reproductive. Oh, yeah, that's why. Anyway, that's not the topic. So here is Bill, Colorado, HB 22-1279. quote unquote Reproductive Health Equity Act. Of course, healthy reproduction is reproduction that succeeds. It's not reproduction where the human that's being reproduced dies. That's not healthy reproduction, right? I mean, we're being just straightforward here. So this whole thing is a lie. And then equity, well, it has no equity for our fellow humans, right? Because there's no difference between the humanity of someone pre-born in the womb or someone post-born out of the womb. And so, this has nothing to do with equity either. And so it's a lie. Let's just notice that and then keep going. Concerning the codification of a person's fundamental right to make reproductive health care decisions free from government interference. Now, we are going to discover that that's not the topic of the bill at all whatsoever. In fact, it's literally about the opposite. So session 2022, regular session. Subject, this is a lie. The subject is murder. So it has nothing to do with healthcare and health insurance. Now, there might be some stuff in the bill that does, but we know the main purpose of the bill doesn't have to do with that. And we know that there's parts of the bill that are mutually exclusive from these matters. And so if they're mutually exclusive, then so I'm not saying, they're going to try to touch on topics that have to do with healthcare and stuff in order to cover their tracks. Maybe they will. I'm not even sure. They don't say much, so I'm not sure if they say anything about healthcare. We'll find out if there's even anything about it at all or not. But there should be something about it. Okay, let's zoom out a little bit so that there's more words on the screen at a time. This is probably the right size. So bill summary. And I should dig out the full bill if that's possible, since this is a summary. Yeah. Or maybe there is this view recent bill text. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that for this live stream. It says an act. Oh, wait, well, I don't even know if there's any difference between this and what we're looking at now. Let me just share the bill itself rather than this so-called summary, which seems to be pretty much the entire thing. Yeah, it's weird. It's like, it looks like there's at least a couple people inside chat, but then it's telling me there's only one viewer, so that's interesting. But maybe people are doing a lot of popping in and out, and the updates are having, who knows, maybe it's just not updated yet. Maybe something's going on out there on the internet. What am I looking for? This one. Okay, let's get it on the screen. Got it. So it says an act, and then they make it look all cartoony and stuff, so I don't get what that's about. That's very unprofessional. I get that you can make it look nice, but not in like a weird cartoony, like making a joke out of it kind of way. I don't get what this is about. Like, you should have something like regal or official looking, right? So yeah. So I don't know. That's just weird. House Bill 22-1279 by representatives. Okay, good. I wanted this whole list. This is the list of there's everyone who voted in the wrong way is also a mass murderer, but this is a good start. So when we do the murderers episode, we'll definitely get all the votes, but these are all the people who sponsored it, not just the main sponsors. So let's look at the faces of the main sponsors. So here, I'm just going to have to share the whole tabs or the whole window for now so that I don't have to keep going back and forth. I got to find the right window. Here it is. Okay, so let's look at the faces of the three main sponsors. These three women. Oh yeah, there's something else I want to show you guys too. That's really disturbing. This is going to be really a morning, you guys. I mean, the world would not find this creepy at all. They would say that I'm like, they'd probably say I'm being a creep for saying it's creepy. So I don't want you guys to get the wrong idea when I say this is going to be really creepy. But it is going to be really creepy because you see that woman, Danae Esgar? And so she's one of the three main sponsors. And so this is like Nuremberg trial stuff, right? Like these three women could end up with a death penalty someday for what they're doing, because what they're doing is mass murder. And I'm not saying like hypothetically because of what's right. The Nuremberg trials are a real historical event. These three women really may end up paying the death penalty someday. And same with every single name on this list. And we owe it. We owe it to humanity that we try them with a proper criminal trial. And this will take years to establish rightful law. But that's what we need to do to protect the babies. And we're not going to retroactively prosecute everyone who committed these crimes. Now, I'm not saying that if we did, that I would feel worse for them than I do for their murder victims. But I don't think that's the way we can go about it under the circumstances of what's been done with propaganda and spiritual abuse across the entire nation to every single one of us. But the people who are stepping into roles of law to institute mass murder, they may be paying a death penalty someday. So we'll be reading those names on that list. But here's what's so creepy. Look, this murderer of babies is like holding a baby on camera. That's her. See, Representative Danae Esgar. I mean, this just creeps me out. Like, this is like Kenny Rhodes level of creepy right here. Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not necessarily going to say murder is so much worse than what Kenny Rhodes promotes, because it's what he promotes is really, really, really horrible. And you can go to CJ's channel, the Cynic, or the Cynic Cog, right? So if you want to get your update on that, then oh, hold on, it's like not showing the screen properly, but now it is. Okay, I was juggling some things. Yeah, so that's extremely creepy to see this woman who needs to go to a Nuremberg-style trial and get the death penalty because she's a mass murderer of babies. There she is holding a baby. That would be like if I saw a photo of Kenny like leaning in to say something to a 13-year-old girl. I'm speaking of Dr. Kenny Rhodes from Reasons to Believe, which is supposedly a ministry, but they fight against the Bible and they fight against the only true God. Yeah, so at Reasons to Believe, Dr. Kenny Rhodes, he's saying that that the United States would be unjust to try someone for statutory rape if they were to take advantage of an 8-year-old girl and have consensual sex with her if that girl has had her first period, because then she is now biologically a woman. Now, I think rather very few 8-year-olds get their periods that early, but it does happen. And Kenny has made his stance very clear that if an 8-year-old has had her period, then it's only the sin of premarital sex, but there's no greater sin than that. She's a woman now. And so there should be no other abuse charges or anything. It's just premarital sex. It's nothing worse than that. If she's had her first period. So, yeah, and he's a pastor at a church, and there are 13-year-old girls at churches, and there are 8-year-old girls at churches. And that him being a pastor at a church is like this woman holding a baby. It's extremely creepy because this woman is a mass murderer of babies. And now we're going to read the bill and see that. So it is by representatives. Unfortunately, most of these are only last names, it looks like. Yeah, so that's too bad. But some of them, I don't know if some people have double last names. Yeah, that's a double last name, I think. So these are just their last names. Let's read them. These people have committed crimes of mass murder worthy of the death penalty. Because when you institute the murders, then you are a mass murderer. Citing Nuremberg as precedent. So this is by Representatives Fraulich and Esgar. So they're putting themselves up as the top two. And then Gonzalez is the third one. So those are these three women. Fraulich, Esgar, the one that's being really creepy on camera, and Gonzalez here. And yeah, if you see footage of this woman, she doesn't really look like that. She looks more like a giant basketball, like a circle. In this picture, so she's hard to recognize if you actually like see her giving testimony and stuff, because this kind of misrepresents what she looks like. She actually looks like a circle because she doesn't take care of herself. And I know I'm taking a cheap shot at her on the one hand, but it has to do with the whole dishonesty thing, right? Like, if she just looked here like she really looks, instead of like changing her entire appearance, then I wouldn't take a shot at her, you know? But the dishonesty side of it is what tempted me to do that. Maybe that was wrong. You can leave in the comment section or email me, like, that's not cool. But yeah, if she wasn't trying to hide it, then I wouldn't have taken the cheap shot at her about it. So let's continue. So by Representatives Fraulich and Esgar, Amabile, Bacon, Benavides, Bernay, Bird, Boasnecker, Caraveo, or Caraveo is probably, I guess, there's no way of knowing, right? Cutter, Doherty, Duran, Exum, Garnet, or Garnet, Gonzalez Gutierrez, which is not the same person as the woman we were just looking at, Gray, Herod. Oh, wow. We literally have the name Herod on this list for murdering babies. I don't think that's a coincidence, but because I don't think I've ever seen the last name Herod before in all my days. Like, I know the name Herod, you know? Or if I did see it, it was way back before I would have known what it was, but it's been a long time. And then here, the name Herod appears. I mean, I wonder if we'll find Pharaoh on the list. Houghton, Jode, or Jode, I guess. I don't know. Kennedy, Kip. You know, I'm used to biblical pronunciations, right? Lindsay, Lontine, McCluskey, McCormick, McLachlan, Michelson, Jene, Mullica, Ortiz. So this guy's a real wimp. He's kind of funny to see get triggered and stuff. So you can see that in the video of the series that's already out. And I'll try to remember to make a playlist today now that there's 2 videos. But for now, there's not and I'll delete my other playlists for the most part. So I don't know what those playlists are. They're super outdated. Please don't check them out. What I have on my channel is like my whole maturing process from a couple years back, so people can see how rapidly I matured in different things if they want. But it also means that the old videos don't represent the level that I think people should be looking to learn things, right? Now I think even when I improve from now, I can still look back at what's here and be like, that's still up to a fair standard, you know? But it'll be somewhat true in the future, just not as true as it is from. Anyway, let's get back to business. But yeah, Ortiz is funny to watch get triggered, so you can check that out. I guess this isn't really a fun topic, but you know, I have the peace in Christ and in His sovereignty And that's why I'm able to face these things, addressing the entire truth of them. But it also means that I'm facing this fact every moment that I live, not only when I do this live stream. So if I could ever like be somewhat lighthearted and joke, then for me, it's pretty much just as easy to be lighthearted and joke right now, because it's the fact that I can put the burden on the Lord is the only reason I can face the truth of such ugly reality. And but because I can face that truth, it's on me every moment. It's not waiting until I'm doing a live stream on the topic to then like pop up, right? And so obviously, even though this is going on every moment, we still make jokes sometimes or different things. And so and there is a moment for this and a moment for that. And but at the same time, it's easy for me to slip into lighthearted moments in the middle of this because the heaviness of this is on me at all times, and I still have lighthearted moments. So let's continue. So Ortiz, he's really bad. And I mean, he's next on the chopping block because he's disabled. So, you know, if preborn babies are less human because they have different capabilities and different physiology, Ortiz is also, he also has different capabilities and different physiology. So, according to his own rejection of human rights, he's next on the chopping block. And then there's Ricks, Roberts, Sirota, Snyder, Sullivan, Tipper, Titone, Valdez A, Weissman, Woodrow, Young, Valdez D. Okay, so that's because they have the same last name. You know, just distinguishes which one's which. Now, it's supposed to be in alphabetical order, and then that would have been more clear if it was Valdez A, Valdez D, then right away. But for some reason, it's out of order. So, probably because, like, I don't know, because it was the conspicuous one, they had to do something distinct with it, and that gave it a chance to accidentally be shuffled out of order. I don't know why I'm delving into that. You know me, I'm too much of a studier of text because I'm in the Bible a lot. And if it was the Bible, then all these details, I would care about them. But so bad habit, not a bad habit, but not for this moment. Also, senators, Gonzalez. So that was the woman I was taking the cheap shot at because she's trying to misrepresent her own appearance. Bridges, Buckner, Coleman, Danielson, Fenberg, Fields, Ginal, I guess, Hansen, Henriksen, Jacques Lewis, Coker, Lee, Peterson, Rodriguez, Story, Winter, Zenzinger, Donovan, Moreno. Okay, so I guess ones that are out of alphabetical order got added later. Would be my first inclination. Concerning the codification of a person's fundamental right to make reproductive healthcare decisions free from government interference. Be it enacted by the General Assembly of the State of Colorado. Section 1, Legislative Declaration. 1. The General Assembly finds that. Okay, so they have found that. So they are declaring that these are facts out there in reality, and they have found them. A. Access to. Now they have the word abortion here, but what they mean is to murdering humans. And because their humanity is the same as ours, I'm not going to really state the distinction about where they're located or their current circumstance in life or physiological characteristics or anything, because that's beside the point. And I think we got to start cutting to the chase if we're going to save lives. And so what this says, they're using the word abortion, but it's simply access to, I guess, legalized murder is the best way to put it, because obviously access to murder is pretty easy, right? So access to legalized murder and reproductive health care is currently under attack across the nation. See, so why would you group those two things together? It's absolute madness. Let me read that again. Now remember, this word is a euphemism, and we have every right to speak truthfully in place of the euphemism in order to offer clarity. I do that often with scripture, and that's God's sacred word. And I'll take a word that would be unclear to the listener, and that God wants us to do that. That's why he gave the gift of tongues, so that it's obvious that he wants it expressed in various languages and various ways to various people. And so he gave people the gift to speak languages they don't know, or to hear a different language at times as if it were their own. And that is the gift of languages, the gift of tongues. It's pagan babbling is a different thing, and I'm sorry if someone's offended by that, but hopefully it'll stick around for a different topic because we can address correction on that at a different time. But yeah, the point is that he gave the gift of tongues because he does want us to clarify his word for people who have different languages. And likewise, we need to clarify what's being said here. And if we can do it with God's sacred word, then we can do it here. A, access to legalized murder and reproductive health care is currently under attack across the nation. So you see how stupid these people are, because it's like, it doesn't even make sense to group the things together. This is just weird, but let's continue. And why do I say it like that? Well, this is just weird and stuff like that. Because the truth is what sets people free. The truth is what's going to save babies. The truth. And the truth isn't like, because I'm so angry, that sets the facts. The truth is that this is just weird. It doesn't even make any sense. It's just like, what? And so it's the factual truth part of it it's really important, right? We're not going to save them by human will. The truth has power. So that's why I talk about it that way, because it's the truth, and the truth is, I trust the truth. Impending federal court cases, including Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. Let's put that in scare quotes because it's safe to understand that it's a euphemism. United States Supreme Court docket number 1392, jeopardize access to legalized murder care. Okay, now that's just weird, but that's what it says. I mean, if we clarify so that it's clearly understood, then we see that is exactly what it actually does say. Okay, so those court cases jeopardize access to legalized murder care for tens of millions of people, particularly those living in most southern and Midwestern states. Okay, let's see this note. That's going to just bring clarification to what we're reading. Capital letters or bold and italic numbers indicate new material added to existing law. So capital letters or bold and italic numbers indicate new material added to existing law, okay? Dashes through words or numbers indicate deletions from existing law, and such material is not part of the act. Okay, so this is all additions to law. This is all additions to law. This is all additions to law. And then these are all, so the entirety of section 1 is additions to law. You see, then it's annoying because, is that? Well, Roe v. Wade is not an addition to law, it's just an opinion. But I think they italicized it because they're trying to pretend it's an addition to law. So this is why the only way to stop people from deceptively manipulating things is actual human men have to step in and fight. And I mean, I'll encourage women to step in and fight too. Um, you know, much better here than um, teaching scripture, and there's specific reasons for that. But also, there's not enough men stepping up, and so if there's women who will be Deborahs, then it's not to their shame. And then let's see, section 2 is all additions to law. And then in some subsections, they're specifying additions to law, and they have a lot of all caps. Okay, so the all caps stuff is more like the official writing into law, and the other stuff is more like a summary it's supposed to be, or because there's a bold heading, that would mean it's all addition to law. Well, this doesn't clarify anything. I think I should almost just ignore it and understand the document as I would have, and I'll understand the document plenty well. So we'll just go with that. Because I don't know if this actually applies to all cases of capitals and bold and italics, or if they're referring to specific instances and then not specifying. I can't tell what they're doing. So, but the document expresses itself well. So now we'll continue. Sorry about that. B, there are social. I mean, I can't believe it took me this long just to introduce the topic, because we got distracted with some things that matter, though. And that's the thing is sometimes it's a bit of a variety show because people matter and things go on inside chat and we address it. So let's continue. So A was nonsensical, didn't even make sense. So now we'll go to B. There are social, moral, and economic benefits when people are able to decide whether and when to have children. Access to family planning allows all Coloradans to pursue personal, educational, financial, and familial goals, and helps decrease the health and socioeconomic disparities disproportionately faced by people of color and people with low incomes. Okay, well, this is inappropriate because we shouldn't be discriminating by color in law. By the color of someone's skin? You're gonna like talk about that in law to make legal discriminations? Come on, that's disgusting. Ew. But yeah, if we address, socioeconomic issues of low income, then we're helping humans, and all humans are humans. And so, while there may be certain cultures that have more prevalency of certain skin colors, and notice I said the cultures have prevalency of skin colors. I'm not going to the skin colors and being like, hey, skin color, you have more prevalency of this culture, because I'm not going to group together everyone of skin color like that. But what I can do is take each culture and be like, yeah, this culture has a lot of those people have this skin color. Okay, so what? I don't really mind acknowledging that fact, but it's like I have to say about other things. Putting the cart in front of the horse and expecting the cart to pull the horse is just really, really, really stupid. And that's how stupid they have to be to try to justify their racism here. So that's really inappropriate. I didn't really mean to review the whole bill, but I guess that's what's naturally happening. It's long enough that I'll stop reviewing the whole bill, since that's not what I'm doing. And I'll do it another time, because there will come a time for me to review the bill. So, yeah, I am going to finish reviewing this one point because I started, and I don't like to just leave my thoughts spilling all over the place. It doesn't help me think to do that, so I have to wrap this up. So there are social, moral, we'll take that as morale, like it makes you feel good, so self-indulgence. Otherwise, it just doesn't make any sense. So that's the most charitably I can take it, is self-indulgence. So there are social, self-indulgent, or else something even stupider, and economic benefits when people are able to decide whether and when to have children. Yeah, people are able to decide because rape is illegal and criminal, and we would encourage death penalty. Now, you definitely have to have 2 or 3 witnesses. And what I mean by that is you're not really supposed to have 20 witnesses. It's like, look, pick the 3 best witnesses, 2 or 3 witnesses. But yeah, so there needs to be 2 or 3 witnesses if you're going to do a death penalty for rape, especially for the death penalty, but in any case, right? Um, and that's unfortunate because there's not always 2 witnesses, but you can't just give every single person the power to accuse who they want and be the only witness and have power to single-handedly, as judge, jury, and executioner, basically, because one witness is all it takes. Well, judge and jury anyway, right? Well, I guess just jury. Yeah, but still, you can't have the accuser essentially be the jury because the jury's told that one witness is enough. That's just the problem is not careful justice. The problem is rapists. And so if we had the death penalty, I guarantee you there'd be a lot less rapes if there was death penalty for rape. But some people don't care enough about women and they care too much about rapists. And, they can turn to Jesus before they die. And that would matter more than anything else anyway. And long suffering, God long suffers us. So I actually don't mind letting people stay in prison to long suffer so that they might come to the Lord. And let there be no 2 ways about it. That's the only rightful purpose for prison is to give people time to come to the Lord. Otherwise, things should be done either by restitution, which sometimes requires slavery if people cannot pay. And so either by restitution or by the death penalty. So when we let people get away with crimes and we put them back out in society, that's not a sufficient way to handle the problem. But to decide, but they can decide whether or not to have children because rape is criminal. So there's no one deciding for anyone when to have children. That's not legal. It's not legal for anyone to decide for someone when to have children. That's a crime. So this is just doesn't make any sense. I don't see why they're talking about that because, that issue's already handled, right? Is there any woman out there who feels like the law is permitting men to choose whether or not to impregnate you? Honest question, because I'm honestly addressing this stupid topic. So it's a stupid question, but it's an honest one. So access to family planning allows all Coloradans. Okay, well, family planning, I don't think they know what planning means because planning is carefully making decisions and then taking actions in accordance with the careful decisions that you've made. And no one's prevented from carefully considering things and then carefully making decisions. Now, if people don't do family planning, then if they're really, really evil because of what this pagan satanic world has done to them, then they might be tempted to murder their baby because they did not do family planning. So this part's just nonsense. This isn't like a legal term or anything, or maybe they have made it legal term, but you'd have to show me where it's written into law the definition of family planning. Otherwise, I can only take them at their word. And so this is all just really stupid. And then the part about people of color specifically, like, why are you racist? Okay, so now I won't review the rest of the bill. I'm just going to read it. Access to reproductive health care, is a matter of statewide concern affecting the health and safety of Coloradans, including those who live outside the Denver metropolitan area and the Front Range, especially those residing in rural areas. So I guess this is not law. This is where they're stating their intention, but they call it a legislative declaration. So in a I don't think this is like how this is supposed to be done. This just doesn't seem right. This just seems like they're cosplaying and pretending to do lawmaking, but they're being allowed to do it in the actual official places. Yeah, because the heading doesn't describe anything that I'm reading. I mean, if this is a legislative declaration, how is it a legislative declaration that specifies the Denver metropolitan area for statewide legislation? It doesn't really make sense. Like, are you discriminating between where people live as far as what human rights they have or something? Or sorry, I said I wouldn't review it, but it's just such nonsense. I don't get it. How is this a legislative declaration? Rural populations face limited access to primary care, including abortion care and other family planning services. I'm sorry, I was distracted. Rural populations face limited access to primary care, including legalized murder care and other family planning services. Okay, it's hard to read this document because it doesn't make sense. It slows me down. Let's just continue. And often navigate increased travel times when seeking health care, health care. This is really weird. I don't know what's going on here, but let's continue. There are fewer healthcare providers in rural areas. Oh, okay. Primary care, including. Oh, okay. So I need to remember they're saying including legalized murder care. So they believe. Okay, I gotta let this sink in so I can finish the document. They believe in something called that they call. Now I know they're using euphemistic language, so I'm translating into clear, plain language. If I use their euphemistic language, no one who's listening wonder. Well, you might understand what I'm saying, but some people might not, and it's too important to confuse people on. So I am gonna clarify what they're saying here. They're saying that primary health care includes legalized murder, and they call it legalized murder care. So I guess that's care for the murderer. So that's where the care part comes in. Okay, so the care part is for the murderer who has hired the hit person, the hitman, and they're to be cared for during legalized murder. So that's what the bill is promoting. So it's not that I have to act like it's stupid. I just have to act like it's really evil to say that okay, but then this doesn't include the legalized murder itself because that's not part of the care. The care is because they're doing the murder, then you have to address it in a way that won't kill them because it's a dangerous process, and that's where the care part comes in, I guess. I'm trying to understand this. So then this part doesn't really mention the actual murder itself. It's only about taking care of the murderer. Okay, now I don't really think that we need health care for murderers in the process of murdering. I think, if they're going to murder another person, I would rather they themselves die in the process. If they're not going to murder another person, then I would not want them to die in whatever process they're doing. But, yeah, I mean, if someone's going to do something else that's worthy of death, then, generally speaking, I would want it to be a risk of death to do something that's worthy of death so that people would be less likely to do it. Because I feel more for the person being murdered or raped or whatever the worthy of death thing being done is. I feel more for them than I do for the person committing it. So if there's enough risk that less people would commit it, then I wouldn't be like, oh, some people died over being a murderer. Oh, my heart's broken. That's so it's not really that necessarily if someone's guilty of murder that I want them dead, but I do want to murder someone to be very risky so that less people will be murdered. And so, yeah, I don't think we should be providing legalized murder care um, any more than we should be providing legalized murder, right? So this is just stupid. So I am starting to understand it, and they're going to mention the legalized murder, but whenever they put the word care on it, they must not be talking about that. So they're only talking about the survival of the murderer, but they're not talking about the murder itself, because otherwise they'd have to leave the word care off. So I hear them. Now, I think they're lying, and they actually mean legalized murder, but that would be slander. It could be slander for me to say that this includes the legalized murder itself because they said care, and I have to take them at their word. So then E, Colorado has a strong history of supporting, and I didn't mean to stop and review again. I just, I really couldn't go on until I let that sink in. I actually couldn't. And I could have, but I would have had to kind of just ignore truth and smooth things over, and that helps with the devil wanting to delude people, right? So I needed to let it sink in into a truthful place so that I have a firm footing on truth. Um, Otherwise, I shouldn't be addressing this topic in public. Even though I only have a few viewers, I am doing it in public. So let's continue reading the bill, and hopefully we'll get through it more quickly because I think that was one of the main things that I had to let sink in. Colorado has a strong history of supporting and protecting access to reproductive health care, including for communities of color. So we're going to see a lot of racism, I guess. I'm not going to comment on it again. I've already commented on it. Colorado was the first state to decriminalize legalized murder care in an overwhelmingly bipartisan effort in 1967, well before the Supreme Court affirmed the right to legalized murder care nationwide in Roe v. Wade. Colorado is a national model for access to, I'll just read it as it is. I don't know for sure that there's a legal definition of this so that I would be able to translate it into clarity. So I'll just have to read it as it is. Access to family planning services, whatever that is, including long-acting, reversible contraceptives. Okay, that's kind of creepy. All you have to do is not have sex, and if you're married, is the only time you should have sex, and then children are a blessing. And so, because aren't these things sometimes like weird devices and things, and like, I don't know, maybe it's just it seems weird to me. Let's continue. That's just my personal opinion. Sorry. Despite repeated rejections of attacks on legalized murder care by the people of Colorado, there have been over 40 legislative attempts to criminalize or outlaw legalized murder since 2010. Yeah, see, so sometimes they'll actually address the topic. Colorado voters have demonstrated that they trust individuals to make their own ethical decisions about legalized murder care based on what is best for their health and their families. Hey, let's just note real quick, like, only Christians know what's best for their families. They need to listen to us, and we need to do a better job at discipling the nations. When individuals decide, that's our job, I think, is to disciple the nations. So if you're on the sidelines wondering what your job is, like, if you want a place if you can assist myself, and I'm working with Graham and Kevin, you know, not that we have like, yeah, if you can assist us in any way, then that's one way to disciple the nations, because we're going to work toward edifying the church unto that purpose. Yeah, like there's so much money going to the Southern Baptist Convention, and it's been going to Marxism for like a decade now. And maybe the SBC are going to fight to take back the SBC for God, for the church. But I'm just saying, there's so much money going to places that are not discipling the nations, and then people feel good because they've donated to their church. So part of discipling the nations is to be a good steward and to not just pass that responsibility on to someone else. Like, for instance, say your church just happens to be an SBC church, and basically all of your giving is to your church because you trust them with it, but then they're giving it to the SBC in a good chunk. And then that's going to Marxism to fight against the church. And so to be a good steward, we want to look at reality. And we don't want to just say, like, yeah, now your pastor is going to be held accountable for letting the money of the entire church go to the SBC. That's an even bigger deal. But hopefully they'll take back the SBC, because all these things are forgiven. There's no condemnation. But it is important that we fight the fight effectively, so that's what I'm talking about. And they don't know what's best for their own families. They need us to teach them. So let's continue. I'm less reviewing the bill and more exhorting us in preaching. But eventually we'll get to listening to testimony, and we're going to do that for hours and hours, potentially. But hopefully people will enjoy that and like hanging out for that part. And so, yeah. So G, when individuals decide to have a legalized murder or use contraception, it is critical that they get care on a timeline that works for their health. Okay, so yeah, they have clarified the distinction between legalized murder and the legalized murder care. Okay, so I was correct when I was assessing them. I was not mischaracterizing them. I was not trying to like twist it or something. Ultimately, because they're trying to make sure these things stay the way they want them, they really have to set their definition so that we don't like somehow flip the script on them because they didn't define their terms. So they are defining their terms, and I was correct about how I saw their terms. When individuals decide to have a legalized murder or use contraception, it is critical that they get care on a timeline that works for their health, with the support of providers whom they trust. Politically motivated, medically inappropriate restrictions on health care have no place in our states or our medical offices. Okay, we do have to pause this time because it's real quick. This bill is politically motivated, medically inappropriate, and I don't know if allowing legalized murder is a restriction on healthcare. It's a restriction on human rights, and human rights, at least in our society, we have enough prosperity to expand that to the point of healthcare to some extent. So when the doctor is not going to be obligated to save the child's life simply because the mother says, "Oh, I'd rather the child dies," then that restricts healthcare providers from, does it restrict them from obligating, or can they choose privately to obligate? So maybe what they're doing isn't restrictive technically. They're taking a different approach. And so we should take note of that maybe technically this doesn't describe what they're doing, but because they've been clever and careful. But we see that restrictions are one way to go about things, but also propagating debauchery to the point of mass murder of babies is another way to go about things. So this is politically motivated, medically inappropriate propagation of murder of babies, which has no place in statutes or in medical offices. So there is a lot of irony here, and the only point that doesn't really fit their approach to it is restrictions. They're framing it up as a lack of restrictions so that you're allowed to murder. It's a restriction of human rights, but it's not a restriction on health care per se. So there you go. I felt that one really had to be addressed. I wanted to bring clarity to that. Let's continue. Therefore, in order to modernize, so point 2 of is it point 2 of G or point 2 of section 1? It's point 2 of section 1. So all of that was what the General Assembly found was point 1. And then point 2 is not what they found. So everything else they said so far was they're claiming that that's the truth and they've discovered the truth, and so they're declaring it here. And then 2 is not in that category. That was section 1. Well, not technically section 1. Section 1's the entire section, but it was the first portion of section 1. Now we're in the second portion of section 1. So this portion, it doesn't describe what this portion's for. It just exists. Unless it's a subcategory to G, by which is possible. No, it's not possible because it's 1 here at the top, and then the letters are subcategories to the numbers. So this is the next broader category. I know I have to fix it. Just give me a moment. And I need to make this a little shorter and then a little narrower so it stays the same shape. That should have made the text a tiny bit bigger for you guys even, which is nice. That doesn't hurt. I'm about to continue. Okay, here we go. So this is the second portion of section 1, which is not what they found. I guess they're just declaring this by raw assertion without any basis outside of what they say in the statement. Therefore, okay, so this is they found the other things. So therefore, based on, and we read it was nonsense. So they're lying. You can't find nonsense because the nonsense doesn't exist in aspects of discovering truth. And so they did not actually find these things. They're just claiming they found these things, but they're lying. And then based on those lies, they say, therefore, in order to modernize Colorado's statutes, the General Assembly affirms the fundamental right of individual Coloradans to make their own reproductive health care decisions. Okay, yeah, and if people want to make their own decisions about the best way to have reproduction healthily succeed, then that's fine, because people own themselves. But it just doesn't apply to murder, and they're trying to pretend that it applies to murder. Well, they haven't said anything to apply it to murder yet, but they're going to, because the healthcare part they've specified, that's not the murder part. The healthcare part is for the mother who murders her child, so that as she's murdering the child, she has health care to assure she doesn't hurt herself in the process. So that's all the healthcare part of this is, as far as the murders go. And then they're including other stuff like contraception and all that too. Excuse me. Take myself off camera whenever I do that. It is just part of having a beard. Some of the hairs don't stay forever. Okay. So here I go, continuing. I gotta switch my screen up some there. Okay. So then section 2. Okay, there's a part 4 all of a sudden. Section 2. In Colorado revised statutes, add Part 4 to Article 6 of Title 25 as follows. So they're adding this to something that already exists, some other law. So they're proposing that they edit some other law, is how I read this. And that's why it's Part 4, because in the law that it's going to edit, I'll just be off camera for a little while. It's that time of day, I guess. So this is going to be Part 4 when it lands in the bill that they're editing. So there must be a Part 1 and 2 and 3 that already exist in that bill, I guess. But it says Part 4 Reproductive Health Equity Act. So I guess in another bill, it's going to be Part 4 Reproductive Health Equity Act. And then it's going to talk about the things that this Reproductive Health Equity Act, euphemism, right, is going to do to this bill, right? So that's what's going on. Hopefully you guys understand what I'm trying to say there. When it lands in another bill, it'll be Part 4, and it's going to be referencing this law when this law is made, if the law goes into effect. So now we're reading what's being proposed to be part of a different law. But then it also is going to tell us as we read it, you'll see, 256401, short title. The short title of this Part 4 is the Reproductive Health Equity Act. Oh, is the entire act being inserted into a place that's already in the law and is being put in as Part 4 of something? So maybe I was wrong with how I described it. Maybe this is describing where it lands in existing law, and somehow it lands in a place that's already going to be called Part 4 or something. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but hopefully we'll find clarity as we go. So it says Part 4 Reproductive Health Equity Act, short title. And I won't read these numbers because they don't mean anything to us, but they are there. They're like reference numbers. So short title. The short title of this Part 4 is the Reproductive Health Equity Act. Actually, I will read the numbers because in case it were to matter for someone's research or something. So 256401, short title. The short title of this Part 4 is the Reproductive Health Equity Act. I'm glad they put scare quotes on it for us. 256402, definitions. As used in this Part 4, unless the context otherwise requires. Okay, so 1, legalized murder means any medical procedure. Okay, well, we're just going to continue. Yeah, they have another euphemism here. Now, when they say terminate the pregnancy, that's not the only thing that they're talking about, because the way they terminate the pregnancy is to murder a human. And so another way to terminate a pregnancy is to give birth to a human. That's another way to terminate a pregnancy. You can give birth to a human and you will terminate your pregnancy. Or if there's a miscarriage, then termination of pregnancy can help happen otherwise. And, they refer to that as a stillbirth in many cases, or depending on how exactly it's done, there might be some that would not be called that. And it's sad. But yeah, so what I'll do is I'll caveat terminate the pregnancy with what's excluded in order to bring clarity to what they're saying. Just like here, they're using the euphemism at the beginning here. But yeah, we understand exactly what they mean. They mean that as a euphemism for murder, for legalized murder. This word abortion, that's just a euphemism for legalized murder. And so even though they want to define their terms as abortion means this, because we know they're talking about legalized murder, in order to hear them clearly, we have to recognize that they're saying legalized murder means this. So I hope people follow how, even though it's like they're saying that's their definition and now you're changing it. No, I'm not changing it. I'm making clear exactly what they're saying. So here, these are their definitions, unless the context otherwise requires. And yeah, that's another thing. They've put the caveat there themselves. So the context does otherwise require. So that's another thing. But we won't get into all the nuances of that. So legalized murder means any medical procedure, instrument, agent, or drug used to terminate the pregnancy of an individual. Well, I guess this review of the bill is good because I may not be a Colorado people, but I am a people and I do assert the humanity. And so at least it's on topic in that way. So let's continue. What's nice is once I start showing video clips, I can relax some, and because I feel like, oh man, I'm already getting tired, but it's because I'm not relaxing at all. I'm working. So, one, legalized murder means any medical procedure. I know this is nonsense, guys. Just this does not mean that that's actually what it is. That just means that this is what they're attempting to say. So, one, they define legalized murder, which they have a euphemism for it, abortion, but what they mean is legalized murder. One, legalized murder means any medical procedure, instrument, agent, or drug used to terminate the pregnancy by means of murdering a fellow human of an individual known or reasonably believed to be pregnant with an intention other than to increase the probability of a live birth. Okay. Yeah, well, obviously, legalized murder is not going to be to increase the probability of a live birth. I mean, everyone already knows what the euphemism means, so they didn't really have to like pretend that we don't know it's a euphemism for legalized murder. That's disingenuous. They're being really disingenuous here. It's really condescending and insulting. But let's continue. 2, pregnancy means the human reproductive process beginning with the implantation of an embryo. I guess that might be a medical term. We kind of think of implantation as like test tube baby, so to speak. But I'm just looking it up real quick to see what it is as a medical term. I know I should be doing it on the same tab. Let me get it there. Or on the same window. So I think then you guys will see it. Yeah. Okay. No, I'm not going to accept cookies. What are you even talking about? You want me to accept third-party cookies? What weirdos. Okay, well, they do use that term somewhere in the technical process, and that's what they're talking about. So, with that, let's continue. 3. Yeah, so that is what pregnancy is, right? Means the human reproductive process beginning with, I don't know if it begins with the implantation. I guess the impregnation I guess does begin with the implantation of the embryo. But by then they're already a human being. And so if they don't implant, then the human being doesn't survive. And I know, like, intuitively we might want to be like, wait, but then that's all those human beings not surviving. But that is the way it is. So they become a human being when the egg is fertilized and then a new human is created. And that new human is what implants. And so, yeah, I can agree that the pregnancy begins at the implantation of an embryo, but the human being has already been alive for however many seconds or minutes. I don't know how long the process takes or can take, how much earlier they can fertilize before, they land and implant properly, right? I don't know the details of that. 3. Public entity has the same meaning as set forth in sections 2410, 103, 5, and includes private contract prisons as defined in section 17, 1, 102. 4. Reproductive health care means health care and other medical services related to the reproductive processes. Okay, I agree, but remember, these are health care and medical services. So murder is not in view here, according to their definition. Related to the reproductive processes, functions, and systems at all stages of life. It includes, but is not limited to, family planning. Yeah, but this is the end of their definitions of terms, right? Or is it? Yeah. So they don't define family planning, so we have to just take them at their word that they're trying to say that a human's ability or a human's careful decision making in terms of whether or not to become pregnant or to impregnate someone by mutual agreement, or at least maybe risk or attempt, depending on the exact circumstances, right? They're saying that that is included in reproductive health care, I think, means health care, but that's not health care. Making decisions about what's best for your family is not health care. That's just not what it is. And it's not a medical service. Okay, so this family planning thing, that's completely nonsense and inappropriate. And contraceptive care. Now, because they put the word care on it, that counts. So I'm not sure if contraception. Yeah, contraception is not medical. So I guess we would just have to call it doing drugs if it's a drug contraception, or if it's something else, we might have to call it body modification or even mutilation at times, right? Like a vasectomy, or I guess women can have, quote, tubes tied, so that would be mutilation. But it's not healthcare. It's not medical, and that doesn't make any sense. Now, the care about it involves medical, right? Like if you're going to carefully implant a device or you're going to carefully mutilate someone without hurting them, then there is a bit of medical going on alongside of the mutilation when you make sure to do it in a way that doesn't cause them to die or something. There's a medical aspect to attempting not to kill them in the process. So we've got to keep everything in its categories, try to stay in reality here, which is hard to do when reading something like this. But I hope you guys see just how outside of reality the pagans are. Yeah, so I guess this just is a complete review of the bill at this point. So that's what it is, but it's almost over and we'll get on to the show. But this is what I have to say regarding this bill. This is the testimony I would have liked to have given, would have been to cut to the chase about the bill itself, in the sense that that's the topic. Because the topic of whether or not it's okay to murder humans is settled. It's not okay to murder humans. So what matters more is that this bill is nonsense and is not fit to be passed into law. I mean, it turns law into nonsense. So it includes, but is not limited to, supposedly family planning and contraceptive. The care part, I agree that once you get to that making sure they don't die part, that has a medical aspect. And then it says legalized murder care here. So they defined that earlier. as when a mother is murdering their child, when you give them medical care so that they don't face lethal consequences of committing murder, or hopefully not any other medical consequences of committing murder, then that's what legalized murder care is caring for the murderer. So it says prenatal, postnatal, and delivery care. Yeah, excellent. But also, delivery itself is a medical process. Um, in the sense that it's a health and wellness process to be done carefully. Fertility care. Okay, well, what they're talking about here, well, that just depends. Fertility can be care can be okay depending on what it is, but when you're talking about creating humans so that you can freeze them in test tubes and let most of them die by that, now those embryos at that stage, there's probably no conscious awareness yet, but considering what the Lord Jesus says about the little ones and what the Holy Spirit inspired David to say about his own little one who passed away, it's safe to understand that those people are going to be there in the kingdom. Well, maybe if they're to never develop a mind, they're not to be there in the kingdom. But where we have to draw our lines is humans are made in the image of God, and we don't get to philosophize about where that line is drawn. The humanity of a fertilized embryo pre-implanted is just as human as my humanity, and they have the same human rights that I do. And if they die a natural death, that's what happens. But for us to create them, to freeze them, and expect their death, and none of the situation was natural, that's a violation of human rights and a violation of the image of God. So I don't know what the exact circumstances are of when, someone enters a moment that they have a mind that, a personhood that enters into the kingdom eternally, as David's child did. But we don't draw that line. It could be at fertilization or not. But humanity is at fertilization. And we don't start making distinctions about humans and murdering some of them because, they're not yet personified in a way that they're going to be in heaven if we murder them. So since they're not yet personified, it's okay to murder them? No. Humans are humans, and we're all humans. And that's why I named the topic, My Humanity Triggers Some Colorado Lawmakers. So I know that was weird philosophical theological philosophical consideration, and I didn't like it, and I doubt anyone in the audience liked it. But if we are considering that the scripture is reality and eternal life is reality for those who are saved, then we've now addressed the hard question and addressed why, regardless of the mystery of that question, we affirm human rights for all humans. Because all humans are made in the image of God, and it's up to God whether they naturally get to a certain point or not. It's up to God, this or that. And so that's all up to God. He owns humans. And ultimately, that's what's even more important, right? That God owns humans, and these are God's rights. But at the same time, I do want to appeal to those who are godless in terms of human rights. And then from there, they might better understand God and his relationship with humans and the relationship between that and the image of God. But yeah, because human rights are right because humans are made in the image of God. And if we understand by intuition why human rights are right, then we understand somewhat by intuition what it means that humans are made in the image of God, in a sense that no other creatures were. So let's continue. So another inclusion in reproductive health care is sterilization services. Now, while it is important that people can make their own decisions in terms of not being sterilized, it seems to me that sterilization would rarely be a healthcare service. Now, I guess sterilization and contraception is healthcare services if a woman is especially at risk of death from pregnancy because of some condition where she's less likely to survive a pregnancy. And yeah, so in that sense, I guess I do see why some people would not want to take the risk of having children, especially if they don't have faith in God. But even if you do have faith in God, um, you know, if you really do know that there's a worthwhile greater risk of death for yourself than there would be for other women, and because of that greater risk of death, you want to prevent becoming pregnant, then yeah, I don't see anything wrong with acting on that truth in a way that does not murder anyone. So let's continue. And treatments for sexually transmitted infections and reproductive cancers. So they're saying reproductive systems. So that's why sexually transmitted diseases, um, because they often affect reproductive system. So that's fine, that part of it. Let's continue. 256403, Fundamental Reproductive Healthcare Rights. 1. Every individual has a fundamental right to make decisions about the individual's reproductive health care, including the fundamental right to use or refuse contraception. Okay, and I can support that because I do think, for the reasons I stated earlier, yeah, I see how that's medical care at times. Let's continue. 2. A pregnant individual has a fundamental right to continue a pregnancy and give birth, or to commit legalized murder and to make decisions about how to exercise that right. Okay, well, that's just a disgusting thing to proclaim, but we'll let them proclaim it. Let's continue. 3. A fertilized egg, embryo, or fetus does not have independent or derivative rights under the laws of this state. Okay, well, what about the rights that they have under God, as stated in the federal constitution? Are they seceding from the Union? Because, I mean, it's one thing to, like, that they sell people marijuana, even though the federal government tells them not to. It's one thing to resist, to punish the murder of preborn babies, even though the federal government tells them not to. But it's seceding from the Union to deny the Constitution itself. And so rights are supposed to be under God, not under the laws of an individual state. That's not where rights are. An individual state, even the federal government, they cannot handle human rights. Only God can. And then all we can do is recognize them. And so I don't know if Colorado is seceding from the Union here or what's going on, but this has extreme implications that they think that human rights have something to do with laws of a state, rather than laws of a state having something to do with human rights. Human rights exist, and then the laws of the state come in, and they have something to do with that, like to protect them, to protect those rights. So let's continue. 256404, Public Entity Prohibited Actions. 1. A public entity shall not A. Deny, restrict, interfere with, or discriminate against an individual's fundamental right to use or refuse contraception, or to continue a pregnancy and give birth, or to commit legalized murder in the regulation or provision of benefits, facilities, services, or information, or B, deprive through prosecution, punishment, or other means an individual of the individual's right to act or refrain from acting during the individual's own pregnancy based on the potential, actual, or perceived impact on the pregnancy, the pregnant person's outcomes, or the pregnancy's outcomes, or on the pregnant individual's health. Okay. So, what this is saying, so they cannot deprive an individual of their right to act or refrain from acting during their pregnancy. They cannot base upon potential, actual, or perceived impact on the pregnancy's outcomes, or the pregnant individual's health. For those reasons, they cannot use any of those reasons to deprive someone of this. Okay, awesome. Because they did not list anything about the reason of human murder. They mentioned pregnancy. Well, yeah, the issue is not the pregnancy. I mean, if you can, you know, remove the human without murdering them, and then they can survive for their life as it should be without them having been murdered, without the woman continuing to be pregnant, then that's fine. The woman can stop being pregnant so long as you don't have to murder a human to do it. So it has nothing to do with impact on the pregnancy. That's not why it's murder and why they're not allowed to do it. It has nothing to do with impact on the pregnancy's outcomes, in the sense that it has to do with the human's rights based on that human individual. It's not based on anything to do with the pregnant person's with the pregnant person. Now, they tried to declare that a fertilized egg, embryo, or fetus does not have rights, but we're not talking about a fertilized egg. We're talking about a human. Just like the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, we're not talking about a woman. We're talking about a human. So, we're not talking about an embryo. We're talking about a human. So, if the fertilized egg was not a human, then they would have no rights because they have no rights as a fertilized egg. If the embryo or fetus was not a human, then they would have no rights because fertilized eggs, embryos, and fetuses don't have rights. But humans do. So this is really complicated because it doesn't specify what it's trying to do. Does it say? It says they do not have. But it doesn't address the humanity. We see where I'm stuck here? Because a fertilized egg is not a human, because they're only going to be a fertilized egg for like a minute. An embryo is not a human. They're only going to be an embryo for, is that the entire pregnancy? Only the earlier stages? I don't even know. And then a fetus, they're only going to be a fetus until they become a toddler, because fetus means baby. And so I'm pretty sure a toddler does not fit the fetus category. So they're only going to be a fetus for like a couple of years, a few years. Yeah, and that's another thing. A fetus means baby, but maybe they have a legal definition that it means a preborn baby. I guess we could entertain that idea just in case that's the case. And this is the way we have to respond to these laws. We can't think that we're fighting against these laws by giving them like 99% of their nonsense as if it makes sense. and then trying to, at the last tiny little inch, now we're going to fight against them. No, this is nonsense from the ground up. I mean, the word fetus means baby, and they haven't defined it otherwise here, and they have not referenced saying it's defined otherwise anywhere else. And so, of course, I don't really know what the word embryo means. That's interesting. Embryo entomology. I mean, someone could accuse me of the etymologic fallacy on fetus, I suppose. From the mid 14th century, it has been fetus in utero at early stage of development. From medieval Latin embryon, which just means a young one. Okay. In Homer, young later, fruit of the womb, literally that which grows from assimilated form of n in and bryon to swell to be full. So actually, it originally means to be in the womb, is what embryo means. Okay, and then let's see, fetus. The young while in the womb, from 14th century. The bearing, hatching of young. In Latin, fetus was transferred figuratively to the newborn creature itself. The bearing or hatching of young, often incorrectly foetus, bearing or hatching of young, a bringing forth pregnancy, childbearing, offspring. Suckling, okay. In Latin, fetus sometimes was transferred figuratively to the newborn creature itself of offspring blood. What do you mean? Because it means it refers to sucking, so it refers to one who is being breastfed still, that they're that young. And so this must be some political thing where they're saying that figuratively it would sometimes transfer to a baby outside the womb, because obviously it means like a suckling, which refers to outside the womb. So they're just being dishonest. Yeah. I'm not surprised that at a certain point this website's going to get dishonest somewhere because of the way the world is. I've never seen weird propaganda like that on etymology.com before, but I was half expecting it, and there it was. Okay, so what's weirding me out here is that does not have. So let's say it were to say a woman does not have independent or derivative rights under the law of this state. I'm just not saying man, because sometimes man refers to both genders. So a woman does not have independent or derivative rights under the laws of this state. Would that strip them of human rights? Or do they have rights as a human? Yeah, I guess it would. So, okay, so here, even though they're using weirdly biological language, what they're saying here is, well, their humanity is the same as our humanity. So I'm just going to read it. A human does not have independent or derivative rights under the laws of the state, of this state. So, and they are talking about millions of humans here, right? Every time a human passes through a womb, they're talking about that human. So they're talking about at least a human, at least one, right? So a human does not have independent or derivative rights under the laws of this state. So that's a disgusting declaration to make. And then they're being discriminatory and just putting it to the least powerful humans in society. And that's the only ones that they're doing this to. It's really disgusting. So for that reason, what I was happy about down here is not going to work. So where were we at? Yeah, because here it only talks about the pregnancy. But the problem is that if the human that is involved has no rights, and they've declared that, then there's really no factor at play besides the pregnancy. So even though the pregnancy wouldn't be the reason we would stop them, it's up here where they've said that we're not allowed to have any other reason to stop them from murdering these humans. Let's look at these women's faces again. And then we can see one of them with a baby. But this is what she really thinks about babies, that they have no human rights whatsoever. This is witchcraft. This is what it looks like to have a society that's run by witches. This is what witches look like in real life. They want to have potions and processes that'll murder their babies inside of them without risking their own lives. There are medical tomes with magi, with wisdom, with magic, with wizardry, with wisdom, with prowess, so that you may make potions and do processes that'll murder the baby inside the mother without harming the mother. This is what witches are in real life. That's why they make cartoons of silly green-skinned people with silly hats on, so that when you see witches face to face, you don't think you're looking at witches. But when you see the demon possessed face to face, because the demon conducts themselves carefully, you don't see the demon possessed, because what you see in movies is people going rabid and wild if they're demon possessed. But demons want to achieve evil, and they aren't going to achieve evil by making people go rabid and wild in that way. This is how demons achieve evil, through the witches that choose to familiarize themselves with them. This is witchcraft. And this is why a witch is not suffered to live, because this is what witchcraft is. This is Nuremberg trial kind of stuff. Nazi Germany had warlocks. We've got witches dominating our warlocks. Well, actually, we've probably got a few master warlocks dominating the witches, manipulating them. They're useful idiots. There's people who are using these women as useful idiots. These women are using other people as useful idiots. The demons are using the demonic humans, the pagans who are going to peg, as useful idiots, which is a technical term in politics, in sociology. Or maybe not sociology is not the right way to put it. I think politics is the best way to put it. Let's continue here. Okay, so 25.6.405, application. This Part 4 applies to all state and local laws, ordinances, policies, procedures, regulatory guidelines, and rules, practices, executive orders, and governmental actions, and their implementation, whether statutory or otherwise. The rights protected under this Part 4 are a matter of statewide concern. 2. Nothing in this Part 4 may be construed to authorize a public entity to burden an individual's fundamental rights relating to reproductive health care. So this is where it cannot be construed to authorize, which is to allow it to happen, even by neglecting to do anything about it. That's what authorizing is to not prevent in this context. Well, yeah, because you have an obligation to prevent it if you are not allowed to authorize it. So in Colorado, if a child is going to murder their child because they become pregnant as a child, then the parents are notified at least 24 hours beforehand, even though they're not allowed to influence the outcome, I guess, supposedly, but they're notified. But with this, notifying parents obviously is a burden on the child's quote-unquote right to legalized murder. And so there is nothing in here that may be construed to authorize that. Now, I guess because it's in another bill, but still, saying that because it's in another bill, it can be allowed, that would be authorizing it. But nothing here can be construed to authorize it. It cannot even be construed to even authorize it. Now, I'm going to look up legal definition of authorize. Legal definition authorize. This is important. No, the legal definition. Authorize, to empower another with the legal right to perform an action. Okay, so they're not empowering them necessarily if they already have the power. To officially empower somebody to act. Okay. So if we're able to hold them to the word of this, then it's actually, the way it's written does not actually affect that bill that says parents will be alerted, because they wouldn't be, this bill would not be empowering that. It would just be lacking to disempower it. Now, I don't think that would really make any sense in practical application. And obviously, someday this is going to be used to argue that parents cannot be notified. Now, whether or not that argument's going to win is the question, but it's going to be used. It's going to be attempted. I think that's safe to assume. So let's continue. Because the nitty gritty at some point is what matters. And what my channel does is nitty gritty. And we're almost done here. So 25.6.406, severability. If any provision of this Part 4 or the application thereof to any person or circumstance is held invalid, that invalidity, if any provision of this Part 4 is held invalid, that invalidity of that portion does not affect other provisions or applications of this Part 4 that can be given effect without the invalid provision or application. And to this end, the provisions of this Part 4 are declared to be severable. Okay, now I don't see things that are labeled provisions, so that must be a general term for specific points. So, yeah, so this is where actually, I guess, if abortion does get recognized as murder, then they do still want the other protections to be there. So if the murder portions are invalid, then the other things will still be here. And I mean, I don't have a problem with the other things, at least not enough that I, as someone who's not really politically oriented, but rather spiritually oriented, not something that I'd get in the middle of, right? So if we have severability to all this murder stuff, then we're going to have to sever all that stuff, I guess. Yeah, and so that kind of makes this two bills. An actual health care bill, and then a murder bill kind of trying to sneak in with it. But we can sever the murder bill, so that's good. And then Section 3, Safety Clause. The General Assembly hereby finds, determines, and declares that this act is necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, or safety. Okay, now, I don't think this act, there is no immediate threat. Like, it's not like immediately, I don't think there's an immediate threat that Coloradans, the state of Colorado, is going to start sterilizing people unwillingly or something, or start condoning rape legally or something. I don't think any of that's possible. I think they already have a pretty good medical system in place and stuff for the actual medical parts. And so there is no immediate necessity. This part's just a lie. Now, in the long run, I do think making sure that the state of Colorado doesn't sterilize people is important. And in the short run, I could see the federal government could get there pretty quickly. I don't think. Well, actually, if they're doing this kind of stuff, then maybe in Colorado they could end up doing something like that. because that's like opening death camps kind of stuff is what this bill is like, the way they've done it. And opening death camps kind of stuff is like sterilizing women against their will, or, letting the people who run the death camps maybe rape the women that are inmates or whatever, all that. And so I guess in that sense, if the state of Colorado is doing this, then maybe there is an immediate threat. So, but it's ironic that the people who would be the threat are the same people who are citing themselves as a threat to immediately respond to. Or else this is just not about healthcare and it's about murder. And they're saying that the prevention of murder is somehow an immediate matter of public peace, health, or safety. That if we don't allow the murders, there'll be a breach of public health and safety. So then we have signatures from 5 people: Alec Garnay, Speaker of the House of Representatives, and Steve Benberg, President of the Senate. So I guess they have to sign it just as the heads of each. Then we have Robin Jones, Chief Clerk of the House of Representatives. Okay, so this is signing it like we have seen this. Though this isn't necessarily we're the people presenting it, even though Garnay and Benberg were on the list. I remember those names. So, but all it says here is that this has been presented to us. We've read it, sort of a thing. It's been approved. Oh, okay. So this was signed into approval after it was approved. So when I was watching the hearing, these marks of ink were not on the document yet, and they had to re-upload it. This was signed April 4th. These other ones, I think, were signed before that. And then they sent it to his desk, and it was signed at his desk at a later date. So that's the governor, Jared Polis. So let's note him, too, because it's completely inappropriate for a governor to sign something like this under any circumstance. And so this is an unacceptable governor, even if he's a Republican and he's supposedly against abortion. I mean, signing this bill is just absurd. I don't think he is. I think he's a Democrat and all that. But okay, so, and in fact, all these signatures are absurd. At a certain point, it's like, I can't sign that. It's not hard. I can't sign that. So we got Robin Jones, Chief Clerk of the House of Representatives, and Cindy L. Markwell, Secretary of the Senate, plus Jared S. Paulus. I might have said Yared or something. Usually in the Bible. Oh, Jerome, thank you. Yeah, oh, I didn't look that far into Kenny's stream. If it's still up long enough, maybe I'll check it out to see how other people sort of fought against him or whatever. But yeah, Jerome, I was saying how it's so nice to see the oneness in Christ and the fellowship and all of us supporting Ben. Okay, so we finally read the bill. I know it took me forever. That wasn't really supposed to be the focus so much, but it mattered a lot. And at least I may not be a citizen of Colorado, but I'm still a people. And at least, the Colorado people have asserted their humanity. Well, now so have I. So I will try to edit this down so that it's so that the part where I review the bill will be its own video. So yeah, I'll make that its own video. It'll have a different style of thumbnail, but it will be on the same playlist. And I'll cut that out of this so that this video will more start at the introduction and cut to the chase. So let me do a summary of this momentarily so that the summary of this can be in the final version of the video when I shorten the video. Yeah. So this act, I just read it in full, but I edited that part. You can go to the link below to see it. Of course, if you're watching as I'm filming this, that's not the case. But if you're watching later, then I've edited out a big chunk, and you probably noticed a sudden cut that you can find what was cut out below in the description. I'll be putting it in there. And so this says an act, and this is this bill. And let's just cut to the chase of the part that's so terrible. Now, you already heard me read these names because I did not edit that part out. But then once I started going down into here, after I read the title, that's where I'll have edited it out. And we'll just skip to this one spot down here. Now, there's a lot of nonsense in here, and there's a lot of disgusting promotion of murder. But to summarize it, so here they're talking about humans, but they're talking about specific humans only. So they're saying not all humans have human rights. And this part's kind of funny because they're talking about rights under the laws of this state, and human rights are under God. That's what the Constitution says, and the Constitution is foundational to the United States of America. So I guess they're trying to secede from the Union or something here, but I'll just read it, and this is the summary of why we're so appalled. It says 3, a fertilized egg, embryo, or fetus does not have independent or derivative rights under the laws of this state. And so what that means is that even if the mother wants the child saved, it has no derivative rights from the mother. And so even if the child wants the mother saved, a doctor is not obligated to save the child if it's still in the womb. I have no idea why they wanted to include that here. I guess they're just really looking to... They don't only want to let mothers murder their kids, but they want to let doctors refuse to save kids, apparently. That's the only reason I could think of for adding that part to the bill. So this is what's so horrible, because they're talking about these humans and saying they do not have independent or derivative rights under the laws of this state. But the people of Colorado, in contrast to the greater half of the lawmakers, and I want to say half because there's a half of the lawmakers doing what's right, but the people of Colorado have asserted the humanity of the preborn. So let's hear them. Okay, so I am done reading the bill. I'm going to get more to what the live stream was supposed to be. Oh, apparently Jerome lives in Colorado. Well, if you'll please, Jerome, there's a channel in the description. You weren't here earlier when I mentioned it, but it's Emmaus Road Ministries, and they're the frontline guys on this fight for the church in Colorado. And it's a small thing so far, a very small movement. And yeah, if you would just subscribe to them, so sometimes when you're available, you can be in their side chat and say some supportive things. That would be helpful to them, you know, and that would be helpful to the cause. And of course, from there, you may discover more things you want to contribute or something. But yeah, I'm not really the guy to point you the way in that Colorado stuff and in this battle in Colorado. They are. And I wish I had a California Jeremy, a California Emmaus Road, so that I could subscribe to them and have leadership here for myself in California. Because I'm so deep into my studies and stuff, it's not easy for me to assert myself to tackle all that as the leader in California. And I don't know who the leader in California is regarding the church, but I would love to know. Yeah, it might be to one of their videos, but that'll lead you to their channel, obviously, or else it's to their channel. But yep, in the description below. And yeah, for anyone who's not seeing the screen, I'm just leading Jerome to the link in the description below. So I didn't really read his comments out loud, but they didn't need to be read per se. And then, okay, now we're going to be watching video the rest of the time, except if there's testimony that I really want you guys to hear, and Jeremy or Greg or someone is talking over it. Give me just one moment. Okay, we'll start here, and then I'm going to change what I'm sharing, though. So here's the gentleman, Jeremy, I was just mentioning, because I had this displayed area up earlier. And here is the good representative, Dave. I don't remember his last name off the top of my head. But this video is on my channel, and I'm going to be making all of the videos in this anti-murder series. I'm going to be making them all a playlist, so they are going to be in this order as I'm showing them on screen now. And yeah, I don't want to take the time to read all the titles, because I already read them earlier. Yeah, so the good representative, Dave, I wish I remembered his last name, but he's really good Christian guy, and everything he said here was amazing, the Christian thing to say. So, oh, wow. Oh, yeah, the last 45 minutes or so is just me. Jeremy was there for about 3 hours. So the first episode of this is only 3 hours and 45 minutes, and it's really good and watchable and tells the story and gives credit where it's due and addresses discussing some tactics in the fight and some different things. So it's pretty awesome. And that's this one here. My humanity triggers some Colorado lawmakers. And you'll find that on my channel. I'll drop the link in side chat in a minute here. But first, let's get the show going. And then while the show's going, I'll drop the link in side chat. So then, here, I'll click on that link. It brought me to his channel. So that should be the same link that's in the description now. And they were working really hard while this thing was going on. Then they had a rally. And now they're going to regroup for whatever they're going to do next. So with good reason, we haven't heard from him in 10 days because they got to relax at some point and regroup for the fight. You can't just wear yourself out entirely. So, yeah, but they have a lot of good 1 or 2 hour conversations here. And then they have these 12-hour shows where they're watching the entire hearings. So 12 hours, then 2.5 hours more, because at 12 hours, YouTube cuts it. And I was helping them navigate that. I didn't help them perfectly, and they did lose a little bit of content one time, but they would have lost a whole lot more if I wasn't there. So let me just mention that just as an example of how we might not think things matter much. And I was just at their that's why I was feeling overwhelmed for a while and not doing videos, because in addition to, getting my head around how I wanted to address my content again, this was going on at the same time. And I was spending, sometimes I'd get there 4 hours after it started and be there for 10 hours or more myself. And Jeremy was there for 14 hours that day. And we had a few days that went something like that. And plus, with everything else I do, that was sort of, that's a big a big straw to really break a camel's back, right? It's like the straw that broke the camel's back, but it's no little straw, So, yeah, but so we can be present and be ourselves and see where that takes us and see how we help. And I have experience because Brother Graham has done live streams for more than 12 hours and discovered that it cuts them off. So the fact that we're so passionate about stuff that we've done 12 hours before meant that I was able to save his show. And the point that I'm making here is not I was able to save his show. The point here is that we can all be there and contribute and be helpful. And sometimes little things that you don't expect are a little bit bigger, right? Because it's not like it was my job to make sure their show went right. It's not like that's the reason I was there. So I'm just giving examples of how it's good to be around and be helpful. And to not underestimate how much influence we can have even in the little things we do. And then let alone the big things we can do, right? So, here is where it is. Yep. Now, wait, why is there this one? Okay, this was a different day. So, yeah, this is the watch party. And what we're going to do is we're going to watch and hear a lot of testimony.
Here. Okay.
I'm kind of going to try to skip a lot of Jeremy's commentary. Not any offense to Jeremy, but the theme of the show is the testimony of the Colorado people, right? And I've done enough that is not directly that topic. So now we're going to get directly to that topic. Let's see. I feel kind of bad because it seems like people were watching earlier, but then I went on and on for too long and they're not watching again. I'm really hoping people will drop back in again, and then when they see what's on the screen and hear what's being said,
they're sitting here
that they'll want to stay.
Facing, notice it's at monitoring the meeting. Those who are actually holding, excuse me, the Madam
Rights, Health, and Justice Attorney here in Denver, Colorado. I've been working.
Oh, okay. This is the one where first there was like 3 hours of testimony for the murder. And then after that 3 hours, there was like 9 hours or so of testimony against the murder. And so it didn't even start until about an hour and a half in. So got to at least go to like 3.5 hours. Yeah, I recognize some of these people. Yeah, these are murder. So here's Ortiz. He's a murderer, and he's very sensitive and fragile also. And you can tell he's sensitive and fragile because, like, he has all that stuff up to accentuate his own achievements. Because, that shows how he needs to be identified. So it's apparent that he would be fragile in terms of his identity. Now, it's hard for me to tell if these are anti-murder or pro-murder people. Okay, we might have begun the anti-murder people because I'm seeing babies twice.
Right to a fertilized egg, embryo, or fetus is going to the personhood bill. That at the point in which there's their parents would be making their decisions. Between the 26-week one and the 30 cancer of age and location.
Oh, it's standard? Yeah, it's okay.
So a 26-week-old child who is born would presumably have all rights attendant to it under law.
Right.
Whereas under this bill, we're saying that a fetus.
The American Association of Birth Centers, a national organization that serves to support and advocate for birth centers and the midwifery model of care. I have been a midwife for over a decade, have attended over 700 births for Colorado families, and have been involved in the care of thousands. Additionally, I provide contraceptive care and counseling to folks across the lifespan. As a healthcare provider, I have a fundamental belief that each individual has the right to determine their reproductive plan and path.
Okay, so we're still on the murderers, and now they're bringing out the babies while they want to promote murdering babies. And I remember the last guy to give testimony was actually on our side, was the last guy to give testimony on their side. So this will be a fun place to start. Yeah, he's going to be involved soon here. Must be part of maybe the next group. Yeah, here he is. So he's going to be the very last one to give testimony. Well, there's 2 or 3 guys who give sarcastic testimony. So maybe he's not the very last one. He's one of the last ones. The very last one is the other guy who does so. So we can see him moving his hand and stuff. So we can tell he's the one talking. The timer's at 1:06. It should be at 2 minutes is when he starts. Oh yeah, that's cool. So we have the timer most of the time. Sometimes the people who go to the table, they don't understand that the timer is supposed to be filmed by the computer, and they move the timer. I take it you guys can see my mouse icon, right? Yes, you can. Okay. Yeah. Somewhat, if I keep it slow enough. So here's the timer, and it's being filmed by the computer, but people will move it. Anyway, I'm only mentioning that because that's going to constantly come into play, the timer is. So I may as well bring you guys into the loop in terms of the timer, right? So can I make this video bigger? No, because the width of it is as wide as it is. That's why even if I change the shape, it won't get any bigger. So let's go.
You're Mr. Kuzava. Welcome.
Hi, Mr. Kuzava.
Mr. Kuzava. I think he might be saying hi, Mr. Kuzava, because maybe he knows who he is, but maybe not.
Stand for life.
Chair and
Oh, okay. He doesn't know who he is. And even though every single person was supporting the bill, they didn't officially say that that's how they're doing it. First, all the people in support, then all the people opposed. So Jeremy kind of kept asking, like, are they all going to be? Are they really going to do it this way? They really did. But Mr. Kuzava is our man.
Thank you very much.
It's painful.
We will now go to our in-person witness. I presume you're Mr. Kuzava. Welcome.
Hi, Mr. Kuzava. Going to stand for life.
Chair and representatives.
Going to be a man.
My name is Evan, and I am here representing everyone who would be better off dead. I think what you're doing here today is so important because looking back over my life, I realized firsthand that I could and should have been aborted. But for me, it was too late. I look back sadly and regret all of the love, hugs, kisses I received from everybody helping mom carry me to term, deliver me, and raise me. My deadly pain is that I look back at my life that was filled with opportunity, love, yes, challenges, and successes, and I, like many pro-aborts, don't want that for anyone who needs my help, but would be inconveniencing me. You can make that possible today by supporting this bill. My mother was not so fortunate. She had to love me, feed me, introduce me to great music, take me to these beautiful Colorado mountains, later help me get my first job, watch me get married, and now the burden on my mother has multiplied. She now has 4 grand fetuses who have graduated into human rights. In other words, my mother is constantly bombarded with affection from immigrants who survived the magical birth canal passage.
Dang.
Yes, I
Evan
couldn't
is
prevent
gangster,
them from birth
dude.
soon enough due to my despicable human weakness of compassion. Please don't put yourselves in the baby booties of those who will be discarded in the trash or sold to be inserted into vaccines. These poor pregnant women have no hope of overcoming this inconvenient temporary challenge. As we have heard today, women will always be disabled victims, and abortion at will is their savior. If you relent under the pressure of all these radicals who support life, we may just have generations of young fatherless men like myself who learn to grow up and be responsible for their actions. Respectful to women, contributors to society, entrepreneurs, teachers, mentors, and loving adopted fathers.
Dude's gangster.
Please defend the honor and legacy of our great foremother, Margaret Sanger. She taught us to discriminate, dismember, and kill those in our society who we deem less worthy than us.
Mr. Kuzava, I'm sorry, but you are out of time.
Yeah, bro, you're done.
I close with a statement. I guess it helps that we can't see them.
That
I
was
stand in
awesome.
solidarity with all here today who fight for eugenics via abortion. And whatever you do not watch Babies Are Murdered Here or the sequel on YouTube.
Yes.
Sorry, but we don't want to have too much joy in the awesomeness of fighting because we're doing the awesomeness for solemn reasons. So that was really awesome. And the guy who's the last person to speak in favor of abortion does a very similar thing. And then that's the end of people speaking in favor of abortion, is this really sarcastic snide. And there's only the 2 of them, and they're both towards the end. So God didn't really let them enjoy their victory. They had their victory, but they were made fools all along the way. So what I'm going to do is, because I bogged the stream down with a bunch of other stuff and there's no one watching now, the whole reason I want to do this live stream is so that people will be watching it and see these awesome testimonies. And since I have not done a good job of presenting the awesome testimonies right away and getting people hooked to watch them, I'm going to end this live stream, turn this one into a completely different show, change the thumbnail and title, and then I'm going to redo this one with the same thumbnail. I'll put a border on it that makes it obvious to someone looking at it that, oh, it looks different this time, so he must be redoing it or something. And I'll put in the title that it's being redone. I might put in the thumbnail that it's being redone, and that'll be temporary. And then the permanent thumbnail will just be this one. But yeah, so I'm just going to redo this episode. Let the Colorado people have asserted my humanity. Let's hear them. Instead, what I've done is given an overall synopsis and reviewed the bill, and I can clip out the section I did about 1 John and make it its own video. I'll probably just cut it out of this video entirely just because it doesn't really fit. And then I'll also clip the part where I'm preaching to end abortion now to change their name. But when I do that, I'll clip that one and leave it in here both. So that one will exist in both forms because it does fit this, but it also needs to be its own video. So with that said, we're going to abruptly end this live stream. I'm going to change the thumbnail really quick, and then I'm going to maybe make a better thumbnail that's more artistic later and change it to that. And we'll just refilm this one when there's an actual audience. So I do appreciate very much that earlier there was a bunch of people watching and they did want to hear what the episode was about. And I was the one who took too long to bring it to that point. And I appreciate that they were here earlier, and I'm hopeful that they'll be here next time when I do get straight to the point, because I've already addressed other things. So I always get into the nitty gritty, and sometimes that causes me to not be ready for the live stream that I do. But I don't have time to prepare for all my live streams. I just don't. That's not the phase of my life and ministry that I'm in. I'm in the phase of doing my learning and stuff and sharing. And so I'm not the best at making a good live stream. I think I made a good one. I just made the wrong one. And we'll make the right one later. So thanks to anyone who's seeing this. And sorry if you're wishing to see more of that awesome testimony. Here, let me get the link to this specific video in the side chat. And then I'll also add it to the description. But first, I'm just going to put it in the side chat. In fact, it'll be at this. We'll start it at this spot. This is the spot to start watching in context. Excuse me, in context of what the topic of this stream is, right? So in context, this is the place to start watching. So I'm going to offer the link with this timestamp.
Kuzava? Thank you very much.
It's painful.
We will now go to our in-person witness. Thank you very much.
And one thing I want to mention just momentarily is that the clock, they were letting everyone go over the clock some. They were being very gracious about it. So they let him go over by almost 20 seconds before they interrupted him. And then they let him say his last little bit. Now, I do want to give, as far as how they fought in that way, you got to give them kudos that they didn't treat him differently because he was being sarcastic and stuff. They gave him his free speech, the same as everybody else. Now, some people, because they might have really personal testimony or something, they let them kind of go on a longer time and stuff like that. But when they do that really non-biased for one side and for the other of the debate. So they do conduct themselves very well, but who cares? It's murdering babies, right? So I'm not looking to give them a ton of credit for conducting themselves well, but it's more like steel manning the opposition and not misrepresenting them. So I do want to fairly represent them. Okay, so I'm getting it into side chat, the link, and I'll also put it in the description. And this is to the specific video with the timestamp. Time-stamped for testimony. So, now when I do the real version of this episode, which I didn't really do, so there's the link, time-stamped for testimony. And when I do the real version of this, because I kind of totally derailed myself this time, what I'm going to do is I'll be fast forwarding a lot of the in-between moments, and I'll know some of the testimonies that are like really good, or some of the ones that even though they're good, they're not as good as other ones, because there's like 9 hours of it, right? Plus all the little in-between time. So if we sort of choose the best half of it and do a lot of fast forwarding and skipping, and we're talking about it, maybe we can see like a third of it, you know, over the course of like a 5 or 6 hour show. Well, maybe I don't want to talk about it very much, because I'd rather see like half of it over the course of like a 4 hour show or a 5 hour show than a third of it over the course of a 5. So we'll see. The point is that when I show it, it might be more cutting to the chase and might be more of an enjoyable way to hear all the testimonies. But the link is there in case oh, it's in the comments. I was looking for it in banners. Yeah, the link is there in case you are eager to watch the testimony and you want to watch it right away. Yeah. But you also might enjoy when I watch it, and I'll schedule it for within a week. You know, it'll probably be the next thing I schedule. So that would be like maybe 4 days out from now to 7 days out from now is when I'll do this one again. And I'll do it right next time. So everybody, the debate is over. Murdering humans is wrong. Let's assert that. Let's fight for their lives. Let's not use euphemisms that serve the enemy, such as calling murder of humans abortion, or calling molestation and rape of children pedophilia, which means friend of child. Yeah, let's not use the euphemisms. That's really not okay. It's about time we really be effective. It's about time we be effective. Amen. And with that, also, the gospel is the only answer, even to the topic of these issues of murdering preborn babies. Yeah. The gospel is still the only solution. The Jews require a sign, and the Greeks seek after wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified. Just trust the Lord and Savior of humanity, Jesus Christ, God the Son. Amen.